I don't need you. Everything I earned through my own hard work. You never gave me anything. Family. Good for nothing. Left me completely vulnerable to this.
Please, Magica only got in here because you threw your family out. Your family is amazing. You fight and get into trouble, but it doesn't matter because you, I don't know, love each other or something. Dude, I wish I had your family.
They're kids. They feel like they need to constantly prove themselves to you.
Scrooge did create his enemies, but they in turn created him. Without his villains, he would have never have been forced to connect with people.
Adventure is in our blood. It binds our family together. And nothing can tear us apart.
You're my family. I can't lose you again.
We may be a ragtag gang of underdogs, but we'll survive like we always do.
If the McDuck family wants an adventure, we'll give them their last.
Boy, oh boy, do I have an analysis here for you. Welcome you DuckTales fanatics into the last episode analysis video for the DuckTales series. We had one heck of an incredible finale. I really hope that you all watched it because we need to show our support for well-animated TV projects like this. It just brought me back to the good old days when I would anticipate the next Kim Possible TV movies. Who else remembers those crazy nights? Well, I suppose the very first thing to discuss is the finale's introduction, as we begin with the reveal of it being the birthday of Webby. Coincidentally located just right above what was previously discovered as Fowl's new hideout, aka the main amusement known as Funzo's. The perfect setting to begin the very last adventure, as this is the same place Webby ventured to with the triplets after their Atlantis escapade. Webby even impresses Louie by not being upfront about which drink she actually wanted when saying that she only needed a water, like what he had taught her from the same episode. This also marks the first time we've witnessed Scrooge pay full price for an entire birthday party get-together. They even successfully managed to invite Daisy, Cousin Feathery, and Gladstone as well. And on their side of things, we see Gladstone being so lucky that he doesn't have to eyeball in the same direction he throws his skee ball, seemingly not having as much fun as the others. Probably referencing that despite his ridiculously fortunate life, his luck begins to feel predictable and therefore not as enjoyable. He was about to learn that exact lesson earlier in seasons, yet maybe since the Magica Dispel episode, that may have set him back a bit. There's also Cousin Feathery spoiling the surprise of Donald and Daisy making their way on a secluded vacation on his boat to get away from dangerous adventures and more. Della doesn't exactly take the news with a grain of salt and tries to convince Donald for hours to stay with her and the family continuing their adventuring legacy, and admits that it won't be the same without him, as he's not only just a family member but her sibling. Plus, Della's psyche may not be all the way there after her whole moon incident. Back to the party itself, right off the bat we can already tell that something is off, as it seems to be clear that this was not exactly a normal birthday celebration, but instead a secret mission to raid Fowl's undercover bunker. And right as Webby is about to blow out the candles, we get a glimpse of how the Fowl agents are doing, and we also get confirmation that Don Carnage was a part of the agency. Given how he was more than likely assigned by Bradford to investigate near the island on the potential whereabouts of where the stone of what was located, they immediately begin to notice something amiss once they notice the variety on that birthday cake, am I right?
It's a cover-up!
But on a serious note, they begin wiping out all of the cameras before ditching the cake and launching inside of the ball pit. Something that Huey had apparently theorized to be the hideout entry and may have been a direct hint as early as the 3rd episode of DuckTales.
It's a trap! I'm sinking!
Now, I understand that Webby was totally into the whole Fowl raid, but it was still messed up how they didn't allow her to at least have the first slice of her cake before leaving. Huey was able to decode Launchpad's sleep talk, which once interpreted correctly assisted in making a real-life diagram of the Fowl building. You know, since Dewey and Launchpad's little adventure while assuming that they were playing a virtual reality game probably was something deeply rooted in his brain. And how many languages does Launchpad supposedly speak? He spoke Swedish in episode 2, and now he speaks in a British accent within his dreams. Of course, referencing the accent that he had once his intelligence was boosted, also taking place within the Double O Duck episode. Oh, and if you were like me wondering whether or not the whole 322 days without an incident was also a reference to anything, then no, it's the same number as before. The team decide to divide and conquer as Huey's team head out to find Bradford and his villains.
No! No maniacal laughter. We are not common villains.
While Scrooge's team go out and find any other hidden mysteries. One of the first obstacles Huey's team face before getting inside of Fowl's main office is a Series 10 Trebubble, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, rather than the old Series 2 one from episode 18 of season 1. And after a well done swift attack from Huey, they then make their way to Bradford's doorway. Only once opened, they discover that no one is to be found, except Scrooge's team on the other hand finds clones of Webby Vanderquack. We also instantly notice some anxious behavior coming from Bentina, who denies everyone's request in allowing Webby to question the two, or from having access to have her old shush files. This even gets a rise out of Huey, so this is when he finally uses the line that I was referencing to in that theory video.
The more we know about Fowl, the better. Perhaps there's something in your old shush files.
Those files are classified.
So unclassify them! Cough up the information, Bettina! I mean, Mrs. Beakley, I'm so sorry.
And even despite Lena's surprise agreement and keeping out of it, it wasn't enough to convince Webby to not confront her biological twins.
That is a choking hazard!
Which I don't blame her for. Sure, Miss Beakley attempts to aid Webby with kind talk, but nothing stops Webby's curiosity and determination in finding out the truth. During the whole Webby family crisis, Louis watches the final episode of Ottoman Empire.
Dad? You're alive? I thought you were lost in that cushion factory fire!
Which totally wasn't a fourth wall break in any way, shape, or form.
Wow, they really tied up everyone's storyline at the end there.
Going back to Webby, she meets the twins for the very first time, being officially told that they were creations of Black Heron. So remember that feather that I mistakenly professed to be Scrooge's? Well, you already know where this is going. Okay, please just give me confidence and tell me I wasn't the only one who assumed that since Black Heron clearly was fighting Scrooge with a hidden blade, his feather was the one that was chosen. And the only moment within that episode that I witnessed anyone possibly coming close to Webby was when Black Heron swooped her retractable arm underneath the children to stun them at the very beginning. Talking about misdirection, well played, Fowl. The twins seem to have no knowledge of exactly why they were created, only to be placed away and labeled as failed experiments, interestingly enough. So, being the overly kind person she is, Webby soon allows them within her room as they slowly learn more information about Webby and her adventures, and where we can finally see the full display of her now finished family diagram. At the very top, you can see Bubba, who was validated to be the ancestor of Scrooge McDuck. A bit to the left is Doofus's skates, cause no one wants his actual face to be shown. And this full presentation of the board is the first we're able to see actual photos of Webby's parents. Sure. Also, anyone find it mighty sus how Webby changed Miss Beakley's profile name from Granny to a now simple Beakley? It's almost like Webby is slowly not trusting Bentina's words. The twins try to edit the board by cutting off any strings attached to Webby, since they feel as if the people not blood related to her are the ones that don't matter. But as one of them does so, Lena furiously takes them down, cause she's a savage, and then it's revealed that the twins are indeed more than what they appear to be. Secretly stealing the mysteries from Finch's journal out of Scrooge's mansion, eventually leading up to June fighting Webby, nearly getting the best of her until the very end. Thankfully, Webby doesn't go alone, but Huey ventures his way inside of Don Carnage's plane as well. Beakley also goes on her own quest after literally betraying Scrooge, despite him trying to teach her the same lesson and telling the truth no matter the consequences. Whoa, I'm sniffing a bit of hypocrisy right here. I mean, hypocrisy thy name is Bentina Agent 22 Beakley. Anyways, Donald finally gives in and decides to cancel his getaway with Daisy for one final adventure with his family in order to save Huey and their legacy. We're then switched right back over to Webby disguised as June, now traveling over to the Library of Alexandria, which was indeed a direct reference to Don Rose's Guardians of the Lost Library comic, which of course was the same library Bradford was telling Gandra about before imprisoning her there. Sadly, we don't have an appearance from Jin within the finale, despite him also being located in Egypt, but I am grateful that he fought within the season 2 finale. Same can be said about other characters. And yeah, I understand that Goldie did make an appearance within the finale, you guys were telling me, but She didn't fight. Like, I thought she was gonna fight within the finale. I was kind of disappointed. Huey eventually makes his appearance in an attempt to save Webby, as he assumes that she was the one being captured, but soon realizes Webby's disguise and plays his role as the victim. Over back to McDuck Mansion, Scrooge and the rest prepare to leave for their adventure on saving Webby, Huey, and basically their adventures as a whole at this point. And the kids convince Scrooge that no matter what, they're going to help out and fight, so any cliche attempts at trying to stop them wasn't going to work. So the mystery gang are all in it again, as they use a literal tracking app to find out where Huey is.
Manny, track their location by calibrating the overthrusting oscillator with 3 nanograms of bombastium.
I found Huey using the tracking app on my phone.
You are losing your touch, Gearloose! Losing it!
And speaking of Huey, Webby is told to imprison June, while May takes Huey captive, leading him straight inside of Bradford's office, where it's revealed that he is the grandson of Isabella Finch. Oh yeah, and all those images that we saw earlier in this season were all cropped or close-ups of the original photographs. Which is understandable. I mean, Bradford looked incredibly terrified, soon fueling his reasoning behind wanting to eliminate any trace of potentially dangerous adventures. But being the manipulative businessman he is, he manages to at first persuade Huey into helping him give back the remains of his grandmother's journal pages. Something that he admits to purposely planting so that Scrooge himself would find it and go on all of those missions in order for him to find the missing mysteries for him. The way Bradford is able to woo Huey into getting onto his side was awfully clever, showing how he technically was the first woodchuck and the worst, and using logical reasoning such as the whole Della incident as backup to frame how it never would have happened if things like the mystical mysteries weren't in the wrong hands, given Huey's nature of not thinking with his emotions. Huey is soon convinced to side with Bradford for the time being, until he sees Dr. Gearloose being tossed inside of a prison vault alongside Gandra D, and surprisingly enough, Ludwig von Drake. And apparently his excuse for not being deceased yet was due to him not having the time to while being imprisoned. No use of magical bricks, no fountain of youth, I suppose, just he didn't have the time to. Wow. Bradford's true plans are soon disclosed, as he doesn't want to safely catalog all of Finch's findings, but instead he wants to use the now modified Salego circuit to eradicate it from existence alongside with any loose ends. This of course snaps Huey back into action, except it's too late as Bradford captures him as well. While this is going on, Scrooge and the gang finally arrive at their destination, as Lena safely uses her powers to sneak their way inside with invisibility. Scrooge's team knocks some heads on the playing field, Gearloose's search for answers, Launchpad's team face off against Steelbeak, and the kids remain incognito for the time being. On Gearloose's side of things, Manny and him are faced off against Shadowblot and Penny, who instantly beats the living scientific tissue out of Gyro.
Take a look! He's a full-grown man, but with the strength of a baby!
Gene the Genie is also given an appearance, as he is still trapped within Shadowblot's glove for magical use, and he reveals something very odd about Manny. And it's that Manny the whole time was the headless horse of the apocalypse, known to be one of the greatest ancient threats known to mankind. I should have made a theory about the blessed bagpipes of Clan McDuck eventually unstoning certain materials, but I totally wasn't expecting Manny of all things. But to believe the simple fact that Manny was just merely a regular nothing to see here living creature despite him being found inside of Scrooge's basement was a bit far-fetched. But an apocalypse horse? Huh? I mean, an apocalypse horse. Why was he just lying there on the ground and not inside of one of the bins underground? It's also imperative to note that Keith David, the voice actor saying the lines, "I live again,"
I live again!
was a direct reference to the show Gargoyles.
Now here in Manhattan,
The spell is broken, and we live again!
Now, the thing about Manny is that he admits to being the horseman they call him as. However, he declares that he's a changed being, which doesn't faze Blot cause, well, he's Blot. On to Darkwing's team. They're soon ambushed by none other than Steelbeak, who has advanced quite a bit from the last time Launchpad fought against him.
I'm not stupid!
As he increased his intelligence with the Intelliray first presented in, you guessed it, the 00 Duck episode, still one of my favorite episodes. It not only of course enhances his thinking, but as we witness, it also assists in his fighting abilities. And I believe this is one of the many examples of Steelbeak soon later on becoming even more of a threat that Frank was referring to. As that's going on, we have Dewey and their team still in the air, with some of the gang panicking as things don't appear to be going as planned, which encourages Louie to make one of the absolute worst pep talks of all time.
But us?
We are just kids. We are completely in over our heads.
Dewey, on the other hand, advises that they Dewey this the same way Scrooge would and tells Lena to drop the shield, which immediately blows their cover as Steelbeak had already informed Don Carnage about the children's whereabouts and begins his attack. At first, it startles and intimidates Dewey, but fortunately, after all of the many trials Dewey has been through, and with his daring attitude, he faces Don head-on in an attempt to crash like Launchpad. And you know those memes that are so repetitive that it manages to stick in the back of your head like a mental sticky note, to where it soon becomes something you legitimately like? Well, that's Dewey do speech, because it was beginning to rub on me quite a bit. The strike ended up being successful, with everyone thankfully surviving the crash,
And that's how you do it!
but Boyd having to share bodies with his little brother Lil Bulb. They had their way inside of the library, soon helping the Man-Horse, Gene the Genie, and LP during the battle against Steelbeak, who has even more schemes up his sleeves. Because another way he manipulates the usage of the Intelliray was by creating an option into making people into mindless slaves. With the slaves being the minds of Scrooge's old foes, both Steelbeak and the enemies handle pretty much everyone with ease, and eventually it's down to only Launchpad. He's already discouraged into feeling as if he's not useful, as seen in, you know the episode. So it came to no surprise that he didn't exactly have the confidence for it now. He didn't even feel good enough for Dewey when playing a simple arcade video game, and whenever the Ducks are into battle, he's not actually well known for fighting. Until this very moment, where everyone he's uplifted before in the past all grouped together and encouraging him. It truly is one of the most heartening moments within this finale, and hearing Launchpad say those famous words before getting into combat really was wholesome.
Come on. What? Are you serious?
And last but not least, I intentionally saved the best for last, with Webby making her way into the filing office so that way she can research about her origin, her purpose, and who she really is. It begins with her finding out that May and June were indeed direct copies of her, given how it was indeed the feather Black Heron swiped from her, and how inside of the files Webby soon finds, which have the title Project 87, a nod to the original 1987 DuckTales series, the inclusion on how Fowl was able to create the duplicates using the Stone of What Was and the Reverse Youth Tonic. Cause though the Duck family technically have the bigger chunk of the stone, Don Carnage managed to still nab a tiny piece at the very end. Also, was anyone else confused by the two different looking stones depicted within the journal? Yeah, me too. They changed the art. Webby then continues on to typing in her supposed last name, which comes up to no avail. But our questions are soon to be answered as Miss Beakley is detained once after getting captured during her assistants fighting beside Scrooge. Despite them being able to take on the now ageified Jeeves, I was waiting for him to do that, May and Black Heron still take them down, leading up to the interrogation of Bentina. And totally wasn't something that was epically foreshadowed earlier on in this season.
I'm your grandmother, dear. I have no secrets from you from here on out.
And coincidentally enough, the harp Nirvana is being used again, but this time as a lie detector in order to verify that Miss Beakley doesn't try and smooth talk her way out of it. As she unfolds the true history behind Webby's origin, where Bentina nearly takes down Fowl, but stops in the middle of her tracks to save an experiment named April. April being none other than Webby Vanderquack herself. It's revealed that Webby is actually April, a descendant of Scrooge McDuck. I don't know how they were able to get DNA samples from Scrooge a little over a decade ago, but maybe there's something I'm missing. Now, after learning this new information about Webby, this changes your perspective on a ton of things that transpire throughout both the series itself and Beakley's story, where Beakley's story still can add up just fine, even after knowing that Webby is not biologically related to Bentina. Well, everything about her story except for the part where she says that her father was a librarian and her mother was an artist. She says that she has no idea that she even has a granddaughter, and before she knew it, it was already too late. But after seeing Webby, everything changed, and all she ever wanted to do from that very day was to keep her safe. It's possible that Beakley truly did have a grandchild, and alongside with her children, they had already been deceased. Yet Webby at first sight was a second chance, which then encouraged Beakley to move in with Scrooge and officially retire from Shush, making certain to never make such a mistake like that ever again. But back to how we can go back and see Webby in a much different light now. Looking at Scrooge and Webby in the Agent 22 episode back in season 1, we can see it now as a Take Your Child to Work Day episode. All of those instances of Webby looking for approval towards Scrooge now seems like her attempting to be acknowledged by her very own father. After all the many times she gushed over the legacy of Scrooge's very own family, little did she know she was a part of that very same legacy. And you may be wondering why I keep saying the word legacy throughout this analysis, and that's because Frank explains that this is basically the main word that sums up the entirety of the season, as well as the very first word you hear at the very beginning of it. But on a serious note, I legitimately was closer than I thought to uncovering Webby's connections with the Duck family within my Last Christmas analysis from years ago. I shouldn't have backed off. After the confrontation, Webby becomes upset after uncovering the many lies Beakley told her throughout her existence and throughout the audience's viewing experience. Shame on you, Bentina. Hey, so, guys, I found this joke that could actually lighten up the mood a bit. So, will February March? No, but April May. And too soon? Yeah, I stole that joke anyway. Bradford uses this as a way to convince Webby into finally getting her to access the papyrus of binding, since the clones were not successful, and it would only work with the help of a descendant of someone within the Duck family. And boy, do I have to give Bradford props for building the suspense on this one. The dude tried all he could to end Scrooge's adventures and use Webby as the last card in his deck. And so now, with the papyrus in the possession of Bradford once more, he continues on with his scheme by capturing all of Scrooge's closest family members, including all three of the triplets, after both June and May managed to find them after Huey just had gotten rescued. Scrooge himself is tied up inside of Bradford's presentation room, where he not only is about to unveil his petty plan in ending Scrooge's adventures, but reveals things much more cryptic. During his presentation, he admits to purposely ensuring that Scrooge was isolated from his family in order to, of course, break him and quit adventuring entirely. The darkest example of this isn't even Bradford potentially being the cause of Duckworth's passing, yet the disappearance of Della, stating that he was the reason how she found out about the surprise project. And going back to when Scrooge explains the story, he just assumes that Della was always great at sniffing out surprises, which I'm certain she was, but it was rather planted in front of her like how Bradford set up the hunt for the lost mystical mysteries. Thankfully, despite Bradford tying up Scrooge, he was notoriously known for being the worst woodchuck for a good reason, as he couldn't even tie a knot strong enough to hold McDuck. But then again, Bradford is already prepared, as he uses the sword of Swanstantine to enhance his inner strength and fight against Scrooge.
Scrooge McDuck is fighting a withered old businessman. He'll rescue us in no time.
Yeah, you know what? Dewey's right. Man, Scrooge is about to open up a can of whooping. Oh. Crap. Scrooge? You alright? So, regrettably, Scrooge's rush fighting techniques don't save him, and he's dragged onto the platform with everyone else, awaiting their demise near the now modified Salego Vortex. His foolproof plan is officially disclosed as he hands Scrooge a contract stating that he can spend the rest of his days with his family, but can no longer adventure in the meantime. Plus, the contract cannot be broken as it is signed under the papyrus of binding. I really enjoyed that element within the plan. And to give Scrooge some incentive and prove showing just how serious he is, Bradford literally pushes both of his vulture associates down the vortex alongside with Black Heron.
Oh, Bradford, how villainous.
And so, Scrooge actually signs the contract to save Donald, someone who apparently may be in fact his most trusted ally. Well, isn't that a reverse Uno? Only Bradford, for the sake of villainy, still drops Donald inside, only for him to still survive due to June and May using their heads, realizing that they were pawns in Bradford's scheme. Black Heron's sacrifice said it all. Bradford goes full throttle, however, and persists on getting rid of Scrooge and everyone else around him once and for all, especially when Louis books it after taking the contract. He even tries to blame them for supposedly turning him into a monster, when, dude, look at your freaking getup. And bro, your villain soundtrack sounds like the Huns theme from Mulan. So the gang all helped to protect Scrooge while also figuring out a flaw within the contract Bradford created, and that one major flaw ended up being that family is the greatest adventure of all.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, at first I kinda called bullcrap on that as well, but it's understandable, as Bradford doesn't even quite understand how it all correlates to adventuring. But then again, how would he? It comes to no surprise that this old buzzard never truly got around to having his very own family from what it seems. He was always hooked on solving an unsolvable issue. I believe that was Bradford's true problem. His intentions were for the greater good, but his way of forcing it down everyone's throats wasn't exactly the right way to go. It's the same reason why we can see Scrooge slowly lose his touch over the years. He's in denial of the fact that he can't do everything on his own, nor does he have to. And that's another reason why I believe Frank also mentioned that he has a soft side for Bradford, despite his villainy ways of doing business for sure. The end finally approaches as the real old school villains teach Bradford a lesson, and Magica now has a new pet, as opposed to her brother Poe, who was her assistant in the 1987 series. Scrooge acknowledges Webby as his biological daughter, and Webby reconciles with Miss Beakley, because though they aren't truly related, they are still family. And wait a minute, are we just gonna ignore the fact that this all happened on Webby's birthday? I mean, same time, is this her birthday? I mean, what is she, 12? Oh my gosh, that's enough questions. And so, everyone heads back onto the Sun Chaser after a glorious victory. I finally can rest after completing this ginormous 14-page script, and Launchpad ends the show in one of the most Launchpad ways known to man.
Almost ruined the tender family moment.
Amen. I said this in my review for the finale before, and I will say it again. The team working on this did an incredible job with this finale. And as for my final verdict, I am giving this finale a 9.3 out of 10. The leftover 0.7 was from not having the Terra Firmians, Magica not reuniting with Lena, not seeing what happens with the virtual world, and for not having a Mickey Mouse cameo. Okay, so that last part wasn't their fault, but I still have my reasons, okay? But honestly, this thing was up there with Gravity Falls, and this is probably the largest script I have ever made. Welp, without further ado, thank you all for watching once again. I really hope you all enjoyed, and please, keep the legacy alive, my friends. Peace!